Putting makeup on today?
I thought about it. That's normally the weekends when I do that. I told you before.
Yeah, exactly.
What I get up to at the weekends.
So anyway, that's a rubbish opening. Can't use that.
Well, I know where you're going, because I did say the other day that in our filming work, sometimes you're filming an interviewee and you have to have a little bit of mascara, or not mascara, what's the stuff that ladies put on their cheek to stop the shine?
Seether, blusher.
That stuff. They put some stuff on.
Powder.
Makey-uppy stuff, powdery stuff, to stop shiny things. And I do have a little bit of a propensity to shine from the top. But that's what we were talking about there.
Anyway, I was on a similar sort of topic. I was teasing my son this morning about, when do you buy a razor for your son?
Your son is coming to that age.
He's coming to that age, but he's very proud of this tash he's got on.
Right.
And I did.
So he doesn't want a razor.
Well, we had a conversation about it this morning, and I said, well, maybe I'll get, I'll raise it on the podcast and just see what we get feedback wise. Should it, when's it time to kind of get rid of that little caterpillar on the upper
You
lip?
don't want the bum fluff, do you? You don't want to be proudly showing off the first flushes of upper lip hair.
But it sort of looks, in the right light, and I've got to say, the sun's got to be pretty close to the horizon.
Oh my goodness.
The sun's got to be pretty close to the horizon for you to actually really get the full effect. But it sort of looks like like a 1930s when they just had a very thin moustache.
Pencil.
Like a pencil moustache.
Yeah.
And but he's very proud of this thing. So I said to him,
if he's got darker hair, it's
coming through black.
Because you've got a bit of a ginger in you, haven't you? Just like me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we should have called our podcast The Two Gingers.
There's probably already.
You can't tell anymore though.
So he said, So I said, well, maybe we should, sort that out and just start that journey of, manhood almost, and teach him to shave type of thing.
Yeah.
But he said, no, it's fine. It looks good because it looks better than your leprechaun ginger beard.
That's nice of him.
So I thought, well, there you go. Youth of today, isn't it? Youth of today.
Well, no respect for their elders.
No respect for their elders. Blame the parents.
Always blame the parents.
Well, at least me.
You get blamed a lot.
I get most of the blame.
Probably
most of my fault. So. But yeah, so anyway, if anybody has any advice on this,
so we could do a poll on the end of this podcast.
Anyone, write in.
Yeah.
When should you start? When should you start teaching your son to shave?
I think when he grows a moustache. It's probably a good trigger.
But anyway.
All right, good. Should we do a podcast then?
We do a podcast.
Stop this nonsense. Hello and welcome to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast, brought to you from Wellmeadow. Every week we try and come up with something new or interesting or useful for owners and managers of small and medium-sized enterprise looking to grow their business. And this week is no exception. I've got Richard here and we're going to shoot the breeze on some recent topical news and general stuff that might be interesting.
Indeed.
And I was just thinking about, what's in the news at the moment, what we're talking about, what's cropped up in the office, and something that's hit the headlines in the US in particular. Reuters issued a press release, but based on rumour, and we have to stress that this is definitely based on rumour, is that there are straws in the wind that there may be an acquisition of Hubspot coming up soon by the mighty Alphabet, the owners of Google. Very much rumour. But it does start to get the old grey matter whirring that when these sort of bigger companies start coming together, what does that do to both the competitive landscape and also the product offering from the point of view of users? Have you picked up on much of this?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a bit around on social media, YouTube, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably worth pointing out again that why are we interested in this? Because we're HubSpot partners.
We are.
So we've been in the HubSpot game for a while now.
We've been following them. But we never heard of any potential takeover rumours before, have we? Maybe we've not been listening, I don't know.
No, I mean, I suppose what we have seen is quite, the growth over the last couple of years of HubSpot has been quite spectacular.
Well, I guess we see a little bit of it from the inside because we see how they behave towards their partners, us, in terms of driving business growth and making sure that customers get value and all that sort of thing. Must stress at this point as well that HubSpot have come out and said they don't comment on any rumours. So they're just doing a no comment on the whole thing. But the Reuters story said that they were going off to see Morgan Stanley bankers and starting to plan what might happen. Rumours are that Alphabet might be offering $33 billion for it as the valuation.
Well, that's the valuation, isn't it, at the moment?
Eye-watering stuff, isn't it?
Which is pretty big, which is, 14 the ratio of price to sales is 40.
To revenue, that is, though, isn't
Revenue,
it? And this is always, for those of us in the normal world, that are probably the listeners to this type of podcast, we're used to a price earnings ratio being applied to profit or EBITDA, but multiplying your revenue to get a value, it's a very software-y sort of thing, isn't it? But you're right, that valuation is 14 times the revenue. They did 2.2
price to book value is 23
billion last year.
So
wow,
and that's despite, I think they lost
176 million last year. Dollars. So a loss-making company, $2.2 billion turnover, 176 million losses, and it's valued at $33 billion. Thankfully, Alphabet sat on $118 billion of cash, so they couldn't afford to think about it. But they haven't got a history of buying big companies like this. No. This would be by far and away one of the biggest acquisitions. So maybe it won't, maybe it will.
But they've got $250 billion ad revenue business.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So they're trying to, there's some talk that they're trying to protect that in some way by tying it into something like Hubspot CRM in some, protect some percentage of that, which I guess is under threat from the likes of, and we talked about this on the podcast before, OpenAI or other kind of
Well, last week
GPT.
we were talking about that, weren't we? And the fact that my search now is partially ChatGPT based, because I like the fact that it consolidates and you don't get adverts on there yet.
Yeah.
So there is a threat to Google. And I hadn't thought about it before, but when you actually think through what's the logic of someone like Alphabet or Google tying up forces with HubSpot, actually, the more you think about it, the more you think, that could be quite either powerful if you're for the idea, or threatening if you're maybe one of their competitors or a user of something else.
Well, you're going to get access to all that data. So there's 200,000 companies using HubSpot.
Yeah, and growing fast.
So,
and I bet you all of them use Google Ads, or if they're not advertising, they're probably using Google Search Console, Google Analytics. They're using a lot of Google web-based and advertising-based type products, aren't they? Just to see what's going on.
But if you think all of your leads, all of your data is sitting inside HubSpot at the moment, Google has no idea what that is.
And yet Google has got 10 times more data than them, probably more than 10 times, but even more data, but not connected. So, just imagine if you linked all that data up.
So the potential power of being able to see, well, if you combine Google's AI tools plus their ability to retarget ads and focus on, if they knew who your customers were, you could end up with a really quite powerful
Well, I think the
product.
AI thing is another layer on top of that. I mean, Gemini isn't quite there yet, is it, with the Bard thing and stuff? Nowhere near where I think Microsoft's OpenAI is stealing a march, but it'll get there. Imagine if you had proper AI intuition to your marketing. That whole Rockefeller or whatever it is quote that half my marketing budget is wasted, I don't know which half.
Yeah.
Is it Rockefeller who said that? Anyway, whoever said that.
Whoever said it.
Imagine if you could apply AI to that, because you've got insights to the whole CRM back end, as well as what data's swirling
sentiment,
around
comments, all of that. So I don't know where that all lands with privacy, GDPR, antitrust. There's a whole lot of regulatory tape around it all, but
and you can be sure whether there's a case for it or not. The competitors will try to slow it down. I should imagine Salesforce and Microsoft will both have something to say about it.
It'd be interesting to see what happens. So you've got integrations into HubSpot at the moment for LinkedIn, say. Yeah. What happens if that was owned by Google? Would they still allow
because LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft.
Microsoft. So there's all sorts of things like that. But
I read a bit of analysis that it was unlikely that the competition authorities would block it, because in the CRM market, which is where Salesforce and Microsoft would have a complaint, HubSpot's only got a reasonably small market share at 5% overall. Larger in the SME market in our world, because they tend to target the smaller ones, where Salesforce and Microsoft tends to be enterprise level stuff and larger. Although
I think marketing automation they've got about 38% of that market.
Right, that's much more significant then.
But that's a bit
especially
more
again in the SME. Yeah, I've heard someone describe HubSpot as being the Salesforce of the marketing automation world. Well, I think that was a Salesforce Pro person, but nevertheless, you get the gist.
Yeah.
But with them having moved into CRM many years ago now and establishing more and more a grip on it, you could sort of see it. So I can imagine Salesforce and Microsoft would probably have a pop at a challenge. The EU might even, with that whole concept of data swirling around. Remember all the furore in trying to get HubSpot to set up EU data centers so that anybody with GDPR concerns, which is basically all of us, needed to make sure our data was here. Imagine if they then start linking it through to all the other Google data, which presumably isn't just EU based. That could be a threat to them in a way. They might lose some bigger companies, but I would imagine the gain is greater, especially if they're SME focused.
Yeah.
We're a bit less sensitive about that.
Mm. But yeah, interesting development to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I was just trying to think through all the potential implications for the product for a user. You know, if you imagine what now you can already see when you go into the Google backend, it's just an awful lot of data. It's very hard to make sense of it. And in fact, when you go into Google Analytics or Search Console, unless you're in it every day, you're bombarded with new recommendations about what you can do and this, that, and the other. And have you updated your sitemap and this, that, what's been indexed and what the search terms coming through and what traffic and what not. You then start getting into Google Ads world and a whole new level of complexity appears, all the different things you have to look after.
Yeah.
Imagine if all that was made as simple to use as HubSpot make it, because they are the masters of the user interface, you've got to admit.
Well, imagine the level of personalization you could put into an ad. Because they would know that you'd been on a website. They would know what your search history is. You would almost be able to get down to a personalized advert because they would know who you were from.
But how does that
HubSpot database.
How does that go then with this whole demise of the third-party cookie? Does that get around it because they're no longer third-party? Yeah.
So they'd be inside HubSpot. They would know that
their own data.
They would know that I was a lead for, say, company ABC or whoever.
Yeah.
They would know what I've looked at before. They would see my email chat with whoever the sales rep was or whatever. Maybe it's been 3 or 4 days since I've responded, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's just going off the boil. We've got to put a personalized ad out. I'm on YouTube. Hey, Rich, what about this?
My goodness.
Like Minority Report, wouldn't it?
Now we're really getting somewhere. Well, that's where it could get quite scary, couldn't it, really, with it?
But it's...
Be interesting, though. I'm sort of interested.
I think at the academic technological level, it's fascinating. How far should this be allowed to go, or how far should it go, or it's how invasive does it become? Yeah, it's more of an ethics question, isn't it? Really.
Well, and then what happens after that? You're right. What does it trigger?
Once you go past that, it's kind of like a Rubicon moment, isn't it? Once you're in, you're in that state. But we've crossed so many of those in the last.
But if that was the case,
anyway.
Why has Microsoft not done that already? It's got its own search platform. Bing is maybe a minority, but 10, 20, 30% of share of search traffic. And it's got the whole of the Microsoft CRM back end as well.
Well, I saw something on this where they said they were comparing Microsoft's share price and Google share price or Alphabet share price. And they were saying when Microsoft shares tend to be viewed a bit more positively when they announce something like an AI or a CRM type thing, because their sort of market is enterprise customers.
Yeah.
Whereas because a lot of what Google's doing is still consumer facing or maybe smaller businesses, Gmail Suite, that type thing, it's not quite. Have they got the pricing? Have they got the desire to pay money for these services? And that was it. Putting the I can't even speak properly. Putting the paywall around AI functionality. That's what Google were going to do. They were talking about it, weren't they? They're saying, well, Microsoft has done that with OpenAI and all that type of thing. But because Microsoft is focused more on the enterprise business user.
Yeah, it's interesting. I speak to a lot of people when we talk on the AI subject, and I say, haven't you just used ChatGPT for that? Surprisingly few people I meet do actually pay for it. I just presume, $20 a month, blinking out the value we get from it, it's well worth it. Yeah. All the things that we can do with it. But an awful lot of people don't. A bit like Zoom. Remember back in the lockdown days, we got your 40 minutes limit. Nobody paid for it. And I think, well, we use Zoom all the time.
$10 a month.
For the sake of what that costs, just pay for it. Yeah. And there's other things like that we just take for granted that surely you'd pay for that because it's such great value. But actually, a lot of people think like consumers, even in work, and no, I could save $10 a month. The fact that you're being paid some factor more than $10 a month, the amount of productivity it would have to give you is not a lot to be worth it. But most employees, I think, are so cost-focused rather than productivity-focused.
We did a whole podcast on SaaS tools, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
And
the average spend per person and all that. So it's interesting that would Google make more of having HubSpot in the stable than Microsoft has already made from having the fact that it's got search and CRM and even ERP systems and LinkedIn already in its stable. It doesn't seem to have really made that work together. You get a bit of LinkedIn cropping up in Microsoft, but not a lot. It's not invasive, is it?
Well, Microsoft is looking at that $100 billion data center, Stargate. Oh, that had me hooked already. Stargate, big Stargate fan. Stargate SG-1. But yeah, nothing's been confirmed on that, but that would be the world's largest data center designed for sort of supercomputer AI. I mean,
So you think that's just their mission then? Microsoft are going much more enterprise, top-endy stuff, going and focusing on that. And so the stuff that we're likely to see more small, medium-sized business and consumer end is more, Google in that sense is quite a good fit for HubSpot, isn't it? They've got a similar attitude.
Well, I don't think a lot of SME businesses probably have the amount of data or the number of transactions that someone at a true enterprise level business is going to have.
Business to consumer product businesses probably do.
Yeah.
But unless you've got repeat customers, how valuable is it if they're one-offs?
So
interesting to see. What I did note is that the HubSpot share price has gone up 50% in the last year before even these rumours. And I think we've seen from the inside, in inverted commas, how HubSpot are pushing to expand their footprint, get more customers. They've gone from, we said this in the other podcast, didn't we? 100,000 companies 3 years ago. It took them 10 years to get there. And then in the last 3 years, they've gone from 100,000 to 200,000. Who knows what they've been saying to the stock market, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're forecasting that the next 100,000 customers are coming a lot quicker still. It's going fast.
Disclaimer, this is not financial advice.
You
should always
forward-looking statement.
Professional.
Yeah. But it was a segue into talking about HubSpot's pricing, which is the other subject that I thought might be interesting to listeners of this podcast.
And I think the two are linked as well, aren't they? Because I think what we've seen is the new pricing that came out a month ago is really designed, it would appear, to help accelerate the growth and adoption of new users.
Yeah, no, I would say it was. So there may be some people out there who are already HubSpot users, and you're sort of locked into your current pricing, and they've put a guarantee out there to say that even with the new pricing structure, if it were to mean that your subscriptions were going up, they would cap the increase at 5%, and at your next renewal anyway. Then after, you got to just see how it shapes out. But for our audience, I think mostly they're winners rather than losers, because the pricing is much more tailored to having fewer users on all the different feature sets.
Yeah.
So it used to be that, and I must admit, I did think at the time it's a bit unfair for smaller businesses trying to get in, because they've almost got to pay that sort of £1,000, £1,100 a month entry ticket price for the Pro Suite when they don't need it all. And yet, as you grew up to the larger companies, they weren't having to really pay much more than that. And yet they've got a lot more users because it wasn't really a per user thing. So that's one of the big changes they've made, isn't it? They've moved more to a per user model.
Yes, for their sales and service suites.
Yeah.
So just for a recap, HubSpot it's got the CRM, which is the kind of I did a whole video on this about HubSpot being a pizza, which it's
gone down very well.
It's gone down very well.
People like your pizza video.
But yeah, the CRM is almost the base, and then on top of the toppings, as it were, would be things like the marketing suite, sales suite, service and operations.
Yeah.
And so the new pricing has really impacted the sales and the service tools, gone to a per user. But it would appear anecdotally, at least over the last couple of weeks, we've seen a few people decide to make the jump into HubSpot off that new pricing.
Yeah.
So what they're doing.
And I think if you think back to, if we were just caught in a conversation, what does HubSpot cost generally? And there's, you can go and look up the prices yourself online. But we used to say something like, if you want the whole bundle of products together, and it does work well together, there's no two ways about it, then you've got a budget around that sort of £1,000, £1,100 a month. But that was special offer pricing, usually with discounts. The headline price of that bundle was more like £1,400-1,500 per month. Well, that headline price is now down to £1,000 a month. And that's with all the features in it and with 5 seats, let's say.
Yep.
As soon as you start coming down to say, well, hang on, we're only a smallish company. I've only got 1 or 2 people in sales. I've got 1 person looking after service. Then these prices come tumbling right down.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to give credit as well to the free and the starter versions, because they're still amazing. It's the whole freemium product strategy that lots of companies have. It still amazes me that works well for them, but clearly it does. And they get people coming in using the free product, maybe that small upgrade. So if anybody wants to see what a website looks like on the free product, go to SMEGrowthPodcast.com, which is the website we've set up for this podcast. And almost as a demonstrator, that's on the free product.
Yeah. And
we've set that up just using whatever tools are available there. It's still got HubSpot branding on the bottom because we're too tight to even pay the small amount to get rid of. No. We wanted to do that just to show people, if you want a free website and a free CRM on the back of it with 1,000 contacts, there you go. That's what you can get. It works. It works fine. The next level up is only £14 a month. And what's crazy about that is their discount structure you talked before about the 5 main hubs.
Yeah.
You've got the marketing, sales, service, the website one, the CMS, and the operations. They cost £18 a month each for one seat, right? So you do 5 times 18. Yeah. But if you buy them all, it's £14 a month for the lot. Now that's some crazy discounting, right?
Yeah.
That's their price, but they hook you in.
Yeah.
It's such a great strategy. So they think, well, for 14, who's not going to spend? Well, the people who don't pay for Zoom or OpenAI maybe.
But there's a phenomenal amount of power in, even
for 14 quid a month. You could send out 1,000 emails, 1,000 contacts with, 5,000 emails going out a month. Imagine what you'd pay to MailChimp or someone just to get that bit. And you can host your website on it, which would cost you a couple £100 a year using WordPress with all of its associated problems. It just seems an absolute no-brainer. You got rid of the branding on it. You can put your email traffic out on it, put your campaign tracking, do all your CRM on it. I don't know. It sounds too much like an advert, but I'm just astonished that a product is out there at such a low entry price. You can see why they do it.
But I think the genius of HubSpot is that you can have, and I've said before, my 13-year-old daughter set up a website and has got her own HubSpot account for her business that she's done. So at that level, free, 13-year-old's able to work it out and set it all up.
What a great skill to come into the job place with.
But also you've got, we do some pretty smoky integrations, some fairly serious automation and workflows, RevOps type projects with clients that are running 30 to 50 million pound turnover businesses.
Well, you get full access to that API as well. So we were doing this work with a client the other day, weren't we? Using Power Automate, which is a Microsoft product, driving the API into the back end of HubSpot, which still works even on the free or the £14 a month version. Yeah. You can connect really quite a powerful system together just for that. So the next step up, if you're trying to court between the £14 a month, starter version and the pro bundle, as they call it, up at the £1,000 a month, if what you're really after is CRM functionality rather than necessarily the marketing automation side, that is priced much lower. And if you've only got one user, I made a note of it, £130 a month or something. Yeah, £131 a month for one user to have the sales up at the pro level. So you've got all the CRM functionality working for you then. The rest is still there. You still send your emails and all that sort of thing. There's no surprise that HubSpot have probably been telling the stock market, look, we're making a big push here on the smaller businesses, because instead of it used to be a decision between what used to be 20 quid a month for the starter and the £1,500 a month, they've now got this bit in the middle where for 1 or 2 users, even a 2-user version of that is £200 a month. This is definitely affordable stuff for smaller businesses who are taking CRM seriously. So I don't know. I'm just quite interested that they made that switch. Only happened last month. It's too early to say yet what's happening. But you've had some inquiries recently that quoted it.
That quoted it, and they've said it's anecdotal, but people have said we've been watching for a while. It was too expensive before. The new pricings meant that we can now access all the functionality and that we need at a price that we can afford, that makes sense for our business. Yeah. And they've jumped on it, and we're helping onboard them and get them going with HubSpot. So it's certainly anecdotally, at least from what we're seeing, having an impact.
Stay tuned and see what comes back of this thing. But I do think, and we're probably going to be helping them along that way a little bit, I suppose, because it's in our interest to inform everybody like we're doing today on the podcast, just to say this is a bit of a game changer really for the smaller business. Yeah. You got to open it up. I wonder if it's worth a quick explainer as well on the concept of onboarding versus CRM implementation and all that sort of thing, because HubSpot have got some funny rules around that, haven't they, insisting on it?
Yeah, and I think this is to do with retention, isn't it? Retention of people on the software, and and as well making sure that people are getting the most out of the software. Whilst we'll say it's very easy to use HubSpot, but it's a massive platform and there's an awful lot of functionality in it. So the onboarding is really designed to kind of get you basically set up, get you orientated around the product, get it so that it's working at a level that's functional and you can use it day to day.
Getting you to day zero, I think they call it. Yeah. That time to value. That's what they call day zero, when you suddenly realise, this is worth it.
So, things like getting your contacts into the CRM, maybe a little bit of data migration, but nothing too complicated. Getting those kind of contacts imported.
You just need a bit of hand-holding.
Getting email templates set up so you can send your emails out.
So interestingly, though, they don't insist upon that for the starter version that we just talked about, but they do insist upon it as soon as you have any of the products at the pro level. So even that 130 quid a month one where you've got sales at pro level, they would insist on some form of onboarding.
Well, I think because the Pro unlocks a huge amount of functionality.
Mm.
So things like workflows, stuff like that, getting those set up, just showing
Now,
people how
HubSpot
they
do
work.
this themselves, don't they? They offer onboarding their own, but they deliberately price that at a point where you maybe look for someone else to do it, and that's why they have their network of partners like us that do it as well. But an interesting point on that is that if you take it all on at once, then the onboarding costs a commensurate amount as well, because you've got a lot to onboard all at once, right? You've got to set up all these different systems. But if you take a more stepwise approach and you are going in just at the Sales Pro only to start with, let's say, then it's a lot more manageable. You're sort of eating the elephant in smaller chunks, aren't you?
Yeah.
And actually to onboard something like just Sales Pro may only cost you £1,000 or something, or perhaps even less, depending on how complex your system is. So what used to be quite frightening as a setup cost, let alone the ongoing cost, that's coming down too, especially as you start to think more cleverly about how to do it.
Yeah. And I think that then the distinction is, you talked about CRM implementation.
Yeah.
So that's something that in HubSpot speak, or just more kind of RevOps is the term that's probably not used so much in the UK. It's more of a American term, but it stands for revenue operations. So it's the whole journey of a customer from marketing and becoming a lead all the way through to cash, as it were, lead to cash. And that can be a much more involved, kind of how long is a piece of string type of project, because the more you get into it, the more you start refining the system, and the more you start finding other opportunities that you can expand on and develop and those sorts of things. So that's a different type of project that we tend to get involved in when companies are saying, actually, we want to use HubSpot as a catalyst really for digital transformation. How do we get a better experience from a customer service point of view? How do we win more work? How do we make the sales cycle faster? Those sorts of things. The data from HubSpot, the functionality within HubSpot is all then, we can sort of pair that with their business knowledge, our expertise in business process and
a bit more
understanding
of
business and consultancy, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And it all comes together like a beautiful, I don't know what.
What's your metaphor?
I lost my metaphor.
Orchestra?
Then. Orchestra, yeah, maybe.
Choreographed dance.
I was going to say marriage, but
Okay.
I wasn't sure where I was going to take it after that then. So I was like,
okay, yeah.
But you get what I mean. It all comes together. Something greater than some of its parts is probably the...
Yeah. I guess that only comes about though once somebody's got HubSpot in or whatever CRM they want, and they're starting to get the basic use out of it. Then their eyes are opened a bit, saying, hang on a minute, we can actually do all this other stuff now. Look at this reporting, this automation, these integrations, we can do it all. Good. So today's episode's been a bit of an unashamed, not quasi advert, but sort of we talked about HubSpot more than we normally do. I suppose because it's in the news.
Yep.
And coincidentally, they've just changed their pricing as well. So it's for two different reasons, really interesting to people out there who might be just interested in what's going on in this market, especially if they're into either marketing or sales in their businesses and they're wondering about what to do.
Should I make it even more unashamedly salesy and say that if anybody would like to demo or find out more, get in touch?
You can say that.
I was thinking about it, but I thought, should I?
Go on then. Yeah.
I thought if I do,
we've the podcast is supposed to be non-promotional, isn't it? But I'll let you off for that one. I think that's fair enough. What we have.
Yellow card.
But tactical one. So got away with it. Good, excellent. Right, I think that'll do us then for today, won't we? And see what comes next. We'll have an update on it before long. And I'm pleased to say as well that the plant's come back in. We had our letter bag was full last week of complaints that the plant behind Richard over there, for those watching on video, had disappeared. But it just goes through, it's a real plant, and we have to take it out to get some daylight in between podcast episodes. He just went on holiday.
Eagle-eyed viewers.
Yes, exactly. We know who you are. Okay, well, thanks again for listening to our podcast, the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow, where we try and come up with some interesting and useful stuff for business owners and managers of small and medium-sized enterprises. I think next week we've got a guest coming on, Andrew Jowett, who's going to talk to us, quite interesting actually, about growing a non-profit business without external funding, and in particular, some of his thoughts around governance and also finding a successor, particularly around founders finding a successor for themselves. Very, very tricky area. So stay tuned for that for next week. But in the meantime, good luck with your business.